You wanna, I'll go ahead and do something? Opening thing?
Yes, I
Okay, okay.
greetings.
Oh,
I'm gonna share my screen for a moment in preparation for taking refuge. I wanted to share. I hope that if you can't see, I'm going to explain this, but I wanted to also make this all the info, and I'll paste it in the chat. Um, so I have the benefit of kind of knowing what Christopher's heading towards for the day. So a lot of times my introduction to our prayers relates to preparing our minds so that we can more fully appreciate what Christopher is conveying during the session. This particular preparation has to do with refuge, which we've been talking about, and the way the Tibetan Buddhists talk about the three levels of refuge. And that's what these three here are. It's the outer guru, the inner guru, and the secret or ultimate guru. Roughly speaking, and in short, the outer guru would be the human being that you know as your teachers, the texts, basically the things that you see with your senses. The inner guru is your meditation on those things and the realization of the teachings, or to the extent that you internalize what the outer guru has presented to you through your analytical meditation and your repeated thinking about these things. That's how we, as you know, that's how we develop a realization. So it becomes firsthand knowledge. And I love that in this explanation of the inner guru, it says that really the role of the outer teacher is to point the student inward to discover their inner guru. Then, at the most profound level, there's this ultimate guru, which in Tibetan Buddhist jargon, they call it the Dharmakaya, or the wisdom body. You could say that it's the functioning aspect of the mind of clear light, that innermost consciousness at the most subtle level has, as we know, they talk about awareness. Its basic qualities are it's aware and it knows. And so it's this at the most subtle aware, its awareness and knowing is what the mind's capacity is. So the ultimate guru is when you have, through your practice, whatever it is, the ultimate guru is that which uh, is with you all the time throughout your journey as a consciousness that has the capacity to realize the ultimate truth. And it's that sort of almost magnetized pulling you. We can all sort of feel it when we get really quiet. We can feel there's a subtle urge within us to understand. And so the ultimate guru is this thing that is most recognizable the closer we get to understanding the empty nature. It's not something that you can conceptually, uh, it's beyond conceptuality. So just wanted to share that because, and I'm going to now paste that little explanation, but you'll in the chat, just so that if you want to have it, there it is. So we're going to take refuge. in all three levels of guru, and we're going to say the refuge prayer in English. This will be the full extent of our opening prayers because I wanted to just invite us to start out by taking refuge. We'll say it 3 times in English, visualizing the Buddha, which is also, by the way, a relative, the external teachers, your teachers, your personal teachers from whatever has led you to where you are now, the texts, the things that have given you, enriched you from that external guidance level. So think about the external teachers and texts and sort of visualize your reliance on those. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And so we'll just feel our strong karmic connection to the teachers and the teachings at the external level. And now we're going to shift to the internal, our conceptual processing and seeking, meditating and contemplating these things to really internalize them. What are these teachings pointing towards internally? So visualize that perhaps as golden light from all the wisdom around you, golden light pouring in through the crown, as we say, the golden light of your internally having realizations. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And so now we've taken all of that wisdom into ourselves in the form of realizations. And then we take it to the ultimate level of the guru, that these realizations, you could say the realizations meet our consciousness, our bare mirror-like consciousness, absorbing the realizations. And so just make that as pure and non-conceptual as you can while we say, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I'm sorry, let me add this. This is your internal wisdom mind that you have within you since beginningless time for the endless time. This is the Dharmakaya wisdom truth body that is commingled with your mind of clear light. So this is sort of the function, if you will. I don't know how best to say it, words going to fail, but you sort of feel that inevitability of your highest, most deep, most subtle, most profound unity with reality. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Guru, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. With the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Guru, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. With the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Gurus, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. With the positive potential I create by listening to teachings of the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And then just feel the unity of those three levels, the unity of those three levels of guru. Okay.
Thanks. We don't often talk about that, the uh, three levels of refuge that you take, and it's because it's kind of hard to put into words. It's sort of profound. You're basically taking refuge in the teacher's teaching you something, because and you're trusting in that. Then you take that and you're taking refuge in the actual texts, the teachings themselves, and you're internalizing those, and they're becoming part of you and how you think. And then ultimately, you're taking refuge in the enlightened mind that you can become. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. It's not necessarily something out there because eventually, ultimately, you're taking refuge in something that you're going to be.
It was one of these recent Zooms with Geshe Nima. I think it was we were talking about the college and the education stuff with the Bryans, and we had a conversation, and he brought this up about the three levels of guru, and that got me thinking about this a little bit more. One thing he said, and I'll share this with you because it kind of increases your enthusiasm. He said the wisdom of the lineage comes into your consciousness through the text, so which is why they why they treat the text with such reverence, because it's it's the conduit for the energy of the lineage, which I found to be. But then he said, but ultimately, really, it's your own mind is the ultimate guru.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way he put it in his.
We were just recently reading Lama Yeshe the other night. He was talking about the same thing. These three levels of refuge that we take. So it's now that we're the section that we're in Nagarjuna is called delving into the profound, and we are actually really delving into the profound a little bit more than we were, and this is part of it, realizing that the ultimate refuge is the mind that we can become, the consciousness that we can become, that we will, enlightened. So this is all leading us toward that. This Today, Nagarjuna gives an analogy of a magic show for what we are experiencing. And so I'm calling this particular session, "The World Isn't What It Seems." The world is not what it seems. So before we get into it, we'll just do a little, just a kind of a reflection meditation. So take a few slow breaths. Imagine that you're scrolling through your phone. A video makes you laugh. Another video breaks your heart. Another video makes you really angry. For a few moments, you're fully engaged in the video, in each video. But if you step back, what are you actually looking at? Light being emitted from a screen, moving pixels, temporary flickers, the display of your combined mental and sense consciousnesses that are real in your experience, but not solidly fixed in their nature. Let your mind hold on to that thought for a second. Real in your experience, but not solidly fixed in nature. There's no need to force any kind of understanding of this. Just feel the possibility that the world is more like a dream than an inherently fixed thing. An experience that is fluid, interwoven, and alive. So now we'll go to the first of these verses. We're doing verses 109 through 118. And this is a translation by Jeffrey Hopkins of the original Tibetan that was translated from the original Indian Sanskrit when the Tibetans had the Indian sages come up to Tibet so that they could get the Dharma. And that is actually the Dharma that has survived. The Tibetans did an amazingly wonderful thing. And this is taken directly. This is Jeffrey Hopkins, who all of our monks and geshe said, oh, he's the best translator. So we're using his translation. That which is secret for a common being is the profound doctrine. The world, as like an illusion, the ambrosia of the Buddha's teaching, samsara and nirvana lack true existence. This is the profound Dharma that is obscure to ordinary beings. I'll read that one more time. That which is secret for a common being is the profound doctrine. The world, as like an illusion, the ambrosia of the Buddha's teaching, samsara and nirvana lack true existence. This is the profound Dharma that is obscure to ordinary beings. Then here's a modern rendition, which is in words that we're all kind of familiar with. The deepest truth that everything, even suffering and liberation from suffering, is like a passing illusion. This is the Buddha's nectar of wisdom, but it's hidden from us as long as we cling to things as inherently solid and real. So Nagarjuna is kind of opening up this particular section with a sort of like a cosmic secret here. The most
read that second one again.
The modern rendering? Okay. The deepest truth that everything, even suffering and liberation from suffering, is like a passing illusion. This is the Buddha's nectar of wisdom. But it's hidden from us, ordinary beings, as long as we cling to things as inherently real and solid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is kind of like the cosmic secret here. The most liberating truth is right in front of us, and almost nobody sees it. So it's not a secret like something that would be hidden away in a file. This is a secret in the way that stars are hidden by the sunlight. It's more like that. It's right there. It's in plain view. If sort of like the blazing light of our self-grasping doesn't cover over it. And that's the thing that Nagarjuna is getting at when he gets to the following analogy that we'll go into. But what we are conditioned to believe, we're conditioned, say since beginningless time, that what we see exists the way it appears to us. This is a solidly existing table, solidly existing people out there, solidly existing success, solidly existing failure, you know. This is the way we think about everything because we're so habituated to it. And we can't see past that. So Nagarjuna is then getting into is going to get into a way that the Buddha talked about. We can sort of look past that. The Buddha saw all of it. The Buddha saw all of this. He saw birth, death, joy, and pain as illusion-like. Not fake, but not inherently real, not inherently fixed or solid. To someone who's deeply, deeply attached to appearances, like most of us, this teaching sounds insane. It's like saying, what are you saying? My pain isn't real, you know? The world doesn't exist. It's that's the way we think when we hear something like that. So the Buddha just simply waited. He did not teach emptiness until minds were ready for it. This is important. This is important. He wasn't waiting to withhold the truth, but he was trying to protect beings from misunderstanding what he was going to say, because our habit is so strong to concretize everything that we could easily misunderstand the Dharma that the Buddha was talking about. He knew that wisdom without readiness could backfire. Sort of like if you were trying to teach somebody who believed the Earth was still flat about quantum physics, they would not get it. They would misinterpret it because their belief was so strong. So here is the verses that Nagarjuna presents this idea of the world that appears to us is sort of like a magic show. This is again Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of the Tibetan, which was translated from the Sanskrit. Verse 110. Just as the production and disintegration of an illusory elephant are seen, but the production and disintegration do not really exist. Remember, this is an illusory elephant. This is a magic show. So the production and disintegration of the illusion-like world are seen, but the production and disintegration of the world do not ultimately exist. So now I will read the modern rendering of this. When a magician makes an elephant appear, we see it come and go, yet nothing truly appears or truly disappears. The same is true for the world. Things seem to begin and end, but nothing truly comes or truly goes. So long before present day special effects that we have now, long before those existed, India had real magicians. They could make sticks and stones look like elephants using herbs and mantras, sort of like convincing people of what this is. And you're seeing this, guys. And I mean, some of this is still common in India today, even.
Is this the cities?
The cities, yes, 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 and what are the Muslims call them? The fakirs, and then it became the word fake came from that because they were creating illusions that seemed quite real, but it wasn't really, really, truly real. So they had Hindu fakirs or the cities, or maybe they more like the fakirs. I don't know if it would be the cities because cities are
They were power. I mean,
they have higher
empowerments, but it was
yeah. Yeah.
kind of shapes. I mean, all kinds.
Right.
Of
They could do things that you would go, ah. And I remember Geshe Thakur would talk about things that he actually saw, and he said, it's like, I can't. What I saw was, I remember he was telling us he saw one of these guys pull like little puppies out of a person's body. And then, this was removing some kind of sickness or illness or problem with the person. And Geshe director was saying, little puppies. And we're going, what?
Mama Pasang was here and we kept trying to.
We thought it was a mistranslation.
Getting the wrong word, and Mom sounds like, no,
He's saying puppies, like little dogs. He's pulling them out. We're going, what? Then he told us about an uncle of his who, whenever they were having a drought, they needed rain in, wherever parts
well, this
Tibet
is
they
a
were.
different category, but
It's kind of different, but it's still something that we would go, what? This uncle was able to just stand out there, chant something, burn something, and then all the clouds showed up and it rained. And we would go, oh, come on, because we are so convinced that things exist inherently the way they appear that we won't even take on board something like this. We'll just go, oh, that's ridiculous, So,
okay, so imagine it's a magic show, because I read this last night. Here's another Lama Yeshe example. A small group of 10 or 12 people were trekking up to this cave, and they stopped to rest, and Lama Yeshe had a thermos of tea, and the person who wrote this, he offered this person some tea, and she said, I know this sounds crazy, but this is what happened. I said, no, no, thank you, I don't really care for tea. And he said, oh, really? What do you like? And she said, right now I would love a Coca-Cola. So he proceeds to open the thermos and pour her a Coca-Cola out of it.
Yeah.
And didn't she say it was the best Coke she ever had?
Another witness was right there and said, my God, it's Coke. And then the girl drank it and went, oh my God, this is the best Coke I've ever had.
And of course, we all go, come on.
Happened? Who the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, this is so. Given that it's a magic show, imagine if you think a lot of times in the Dharma, if the realizations, if you internalize the realizations, then you know how to work with
the elements,
the appearances.
Yeah.
Like Jesus making bread, and I mean, all
right, water into wine and all that. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
It's certainly.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
hypnosis.
Well, whatever. This could all be hypnosis.
Well, I mean, that's actually the point. Is what the if you, I know that you tend towards a materialistic physics, atoms and molecules base of interpreting what is,
and there's nothing wrong with
but
that.
maybe there's something else too.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I would think, current physics, the direction it's going in, is going to open up a lot of these things that we never considered as possibilities.
But yeah, I mean, that would very much be something on the hypnosis.
Yeah.
But I think in the sense, what can you say in a magic show? How does the elephant appear? It's just a group hypnosis. We can see in our society, how does anything?
Yeah. So basically, Nagarjuna is saying we are watching the greatest magic show of all time, what we call reality itself. Spectators.
Interesting. When we use nouns, if we had in our mind that, like say earbuds, that we understood in the motion, that we didn't think fixed earbuds. Just like every time
down to the particle level.
It would be an interesting exercise. Every time we use a noun to call to mind, table, chair, glasses. You just sort of, the noun contains this level of meaning, because we don't tend to think that way at all.
Yeah. So spectators are terrified when a magical elephant charges at them. The magician sees the elephant, but knows it isn't real and isn't afraid. So this is an analogy. This is an analogy Nagarjuna is giving now for types of beings. The spectators are terrified. The magician knows that it's not real, and the magician's not afraid. Latecomers to the show aren't affected by the herbs and mantras. That's already happened. So they only see sticks and stones and they wonder, what's all the fuss about? Why are these people running away? There's just sticks and stones because they haven't had the herbs, they haven't had the mantra. Yeah, they're not under the spell, you might say. Similarly, ordinary beings, ordinary sentient beings like us, react with attachment and aversion to the false appearances they believe are inherently real. Birth, death, money, the latest breaking news. How do we react to all that stuff? With a lot of attachment and aversion. Because we see them as being real, and so that, we get all upset about it. We don't see them as kind of movable, shifting, illusory. We don't see it that way. For an Arya being, now this is a being who has had a direct realization of emptiness. This is a highly realized being. For an Arya being, this is like the latecomer to the show. For the Arya being, in the post-meditation state, this is when they're out of direct realization of emptiness and they're back awake in the post-meditation state. And also those who have realized emptiness directly, inferentially, I should say, inferentially. Things still appear as if they're solid and real, but knowing that they are false, these beings remain calm and don't respond with attachment, aversion, fear, or any other disturbing emotion. Because they understand what is going on, even though it appears this way to them when they're out of their, deep meditative absorption. Having had that absorption, having had that understanding, that realization, they understand this is not solid the way it actually appears. And I would think many physicists would also have that understanding. They'll go, this is not actually, solid the way it appears to you, because we've looked, we've seen, it's a bunch of moving things constantly changing. So now we go to, and then for an Arya being who is in a deep meditative state of equipoise, so actually in the meditation, the only thing that is perceived is the ultimate nature of everything, emptiness. That's what is perceived in deep meditative equipoise by an Arya being. None of this appears. So that's just an interesting analogy that Nagarjuna has given of the various levels of the magic show. So here's verses 112 and 113, and here's the Jeffrey Hopkins translation. Just as an illusory elephant, being only a bewildering of consciousness, does not come from anywhere, nor go anywhere, nor really stay anywhere. So the illusion-like world, this is the next verse, 113. So the illusion-like world, being only a bewildering of consciousness, does not come from anywhere, doesn't go anywhere, nor really stay. So that's the Jeffrey Hopkins translation from the original. And here's the modern restatement. The elephant you see in the magic trick doesn't come or go. It's just your mind being dazzled. The same goes for the world itself. It's a dance of appearances with nothing truly arriving or truly leaving. So here's commentary on this. We are very comfortable with the idea of arrivals and departures, coming and going. People visiting us, leaving us going to places, coming back, coming and going. We're very comfortable with that. Or things like opportunities vanishing for us, or the job that we once have is gone. It no longer exists, can't even do it anymore. Nagarjuna says, look deeper than that. All of that movement happens within our awareness, not outside of it. All of that coming and going is happening within our awareness, not outside of it. It's so different than the way we think we're perceiving things. Everything that seems to appear is just consciousness being bewildered by its own display. Kind of like watching a dream that you're having and not realizing you're the one who's dreaming it. I mean, sometimes people will have dreams and we'll think, oh my God, this is some special thing. Somebody's showing me something in a dream. And we'll say that dream it's not me generating that dream, it's some special thing. But it is. We're the ones generating it. The dream is coming from our consciousness, our mind, our subtle mind. Doesn't mean it can't be connected to some other things, but it's an appearance of our consciousness. And so they're saying it's the same with what's appearing to us here. It's our consciousness, that's the appearance that's within, that we are we're sort of projecting it as if it's outside of us. When we really understand this, if we really understand this, then emotional balance is naturally going to arise in us. Emotional balance. We're not going to get bent out of shape over who did what to me when I was 10, or what, somebody said to me yesterday, or what I saw on the internet today that somebody said. We will get an emotional balance when we understand this is all an awareness coming from within my own mind. So when that occurs, insults lose their sting. When we're praised, we don't grasp at it and cling to it. So we still care, but we don't have this like emotional roller coaster going on all the time. Like somebody said this to me, blah, 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 blah. It's the appearance of your own consciousness. This is difficult. It's difficult for us to consider this because we've never actually considered it. We've never actually considered this possibility. We're convinced that everything exists the way it appears to us. We hear the words, but we're going, but this is solid, this thing. But you kind of go, what's going on here, So here are some thoughts that we could reflect on. If we could see our own thoughts and emotions sort of in this sort of illusory way, how might that affect the way we handle anxiety and anger? We're usually with anxiety and anger, we're saying something out there is triggering me and it's making me very angry at that thing. If we actually recognize that this is an appearance of our own consciousness, how are we going to start to think about this in a different way? Remember, this idea of emotional balance will naturally arise when we become more stable and understanding. I'm just not the victim of everything that's going on out there. I am the awareness that can make a decision about, well, how am I going to respond to this? If this doesn't have any actual inherent existence, if somebody's criticizing me, well, what's going on here? Maybe I should think about that. Ask them. Not be so immediately, get angry and start fighting back or blaming. That's one of our favorite things. One of our favorite things is to blame. We begin with our parents and go on from there. And it's not my fault, not my fault. They did this, they did that. If we take responsibility for our consciousness, what appears to our consciousness, our reactions, then we become so much more balanced about it all. I mean, this is actually very helpful information, but it requires us to open our mind a little bit, maybe a lot. So if we were able to recognize our own, sort of internal magic show going on, what would that do for the way we feel about others and the level of compassion and understanding we have for others? And especially if we're going, oh, well, wait a minute, others are an appearance. The way I'm seeing others is an appearance in my mind. If I change the way I'm thinking about all of that, then I would, uh, compassion is naturally just going to express itself because we'll understand, oh, they're going through the same thing I'm going through. I mean, we have to think about it, but I mean, I've had some experience with this, and I will have to say it's actually true. You can let go of so many things once you decide to. Once you decide that actually, what my parents did for me was so beneficial, no matter what. My relationships are so beneficial, no matter what. So it's really up to us if we're going to see through our own personal magic show going on. So now we go on to verse 114. And this is the Jeffrey Hopkins translation. Any discussion about that? Any observations about that? Personal observations about that?
Just that our attachments drive us to pay attention to particular things, and our repeated exposure to particular things due to our attachments becomes a pretty heavy filter.
Mm.
And what I'm thinking of specifically is, say, I'm thinking about Patricia. She was highly attached to her family,
That's my mother, by the way.
and therefore, and so everything she exposed herself to, she spent a lot of time thinking about her family in a positive way, and where she saw problems, manipulating her family to create this, the perfect family dynamic that she kind of envisioned. She's put a lot into it. So her worldview was highly family centric in the sense that she was kind of like, it was like she was the CEO of the family, you could say. It would be as if you've ever had a job in an large organization that has lots of responsibility. You tend to think about that job and the people that report to you and your superiors and the mission of the organization. It becomes very integrated into all of your activity. I have a niece who works for USAA in upper management, and it's kind of her world. She's very family oriented, but it's a but anyway. I think that we need to remember that our biases drive what we expose ourselves to, and therefore our attachments are driving our worldview,
Yeah,
which is why it's so easy to manipulate whole societies into these
right.
groups.
You just appeal to their attachments and
Yes,
the
because
opposite,
they're
aversions.
and
Yeah,
you've got them.
yeah. Well, one of the things Venerable Robina says, and it's so true, is that we are nothing but a bunch of habits, and those habits arise out of attachment. So you could say the stronger the habit, the more you're getting towards what is called addiction. And Robina says, we're all addicts. To varying degrees, we are all addicts because of this. And it comes down to the fundamental one, which is grasping at the self as if the self, the me, the I, is an inherently solid, fixed thing. And we are so attached to that, which causes all the problems, which samsara arises out of that. So the attachment's a huge one because from attachment comes aversion.
It's important to realize that it's filtering what we see. When you're really attached to someone, we all have had the experience. It's hard to see their negative qualities.
Mm.
All you see is a handsome, and if you've been conditioned to think somebody's bad, then all you see is their negative.
All you see is the bad. Oh, and do we clearly see this in the media? I mean,
we know it even in our families
too.
That's what the black sheep of the family is all about.
Right, I know.
You start saying over and over again that so and so's a loser, and sure enough, all you see when you see that person.
Sometimes we will live into other people's views of us, and that's where we get into so much.
Or our own views of ourselves.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, basically, their views become our own. We take it on.
Tapes that run.
Yeah, you're right. So this is very, very liberating if we see it properly. If we take this information on board properly, it's totally liberating to our emotional world, our relationships. It just kind of takes away all of the veils of attachment and misunderstanding and gets down to the basic. Wow, this is an appearance of my consciousness. What do I want it to be? Do I want it? Do I want to hate people? Do I want to be attached to things to such a degree that I can't live without them? Whether it's food or sex or money or power? We can make that change, but we have to, first of all, recognize what it is we're doing.
And you can see collectively, because, as things appear in our personal lives or even in the collective life, it's still, we tend to think of this as my appearance, and it is in part. But we're all, there's a collective thing going on. And then when we but we can't change the whole collective, but we can, when we recognize it ourselves as we change it, it really does shift.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever seen a stampede, it's interesting because it happens. If you can watch these videos and one of the animals will suddenly start going another direction, and sure enough,
Yes.
That's right. I mean, that's kind of how societies move.
Yeah.
As we continue as a group and individually studying, I mean, there's the Tibetans have these 4 schools of philosophy that explain how things exist, and all our lineage goes by what they of course call it the most subtle, highest school, which is the Madhyamika Prasangika, which is
Nagarjuna.
Nagarjuna, which is the middle way. Consequentialist is one of the things, but what they have set out to do, this is the group that says everything that appears to your consciousness only is appearing as a mere label. It exists as a mere label. So even when you start to talk about, like, say, atoms or molecules or quarks, or even biophotons, or even they basically, this Prasangika school is saying these subatomic that we in our Western world think of as the building blocks of reality. No, these are merely labels.
Okay, stop there because you are so on track. Let me read the next thing. This is the Jeffrey Hopkins translation. This is verse 114. Thus, it has a nature beyond the 3 times. And those 3 times could be past, present, future, but they also could be coming into existence, remaining, and going out of existence. There are 2 different ways to look at these 3 times. And everything is we think of it that way. Even a moment comes into existence, it remains for whatever a moment is, it goes out of existence. So here's the modern rendering of that. Oh, well, let me finish the Jeffrey Hopkins. Thus, it has a nature beyond the 3 times. other than as the imputation of a convention. What world is there, in fact, which would exist or not? Here's the modern rendering. Since things don't truly arise, remain, or cease, they exist only as names and labels. Beyond words, what world could we actually point to? If we don't have the label for the thing, what can we point to and say, this is what that is? We label everything.
This is, again, I find it helpful to remember we have very ordinary examples. We have a thing called a cloud, and we go, oh, look, a cloud. And yet we know it's just this transitory clump of molecules of which themselves are transitory. Same with the wave. We go, oh, look, the wave, that was a big wave. You know,
Mhm.
we could also say, my mother. They use the flat, we are like a bolt of lightning in the dark sky, we come together
Mhm,
and we fall apart.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, in this
And
kind
it
of,
gets a little weird when you.
it's
I mean,
weird
like
because it's
this,
not
like,
Yeah.
our
whoa.
culture teaching.
I know. Well,
But imagine
everything.
normally not say as an Australian Aborigine, and this would be, I don't blame.
Well, so take the example of my mother, right? So we go, oh, my mother, that's the label. But then you go, well, my mother was this. My mother was funny. Well, funny's a label. Funny's a label. Well, my mother was short. That's a label.
I'm just talking about the person.
All of the, but the qualities of the person too, their energy, it's all label. What the body is made of. All when you get down to the cells and then the subatomic particles, they're all labels for things. Which if we did not have the labels, we couldn't point to them and say that's what that is. It's just a interdependent flow of things, sort of seeming to come together, remain for a while, coming apart again, but they're not really, but they're shifting and changing and very, very fluid. What we tend to do with the labels is we concretize them and say, my mother was this and that and this and that. And this, and I know how she was, and this is why I'm the way I am, and it's her fault, you know. And it's not like that at all.
Appears.
Very, very fluid, much more fluid than we actually think. So the labels, these labels, understanding labels is important. Nagarjuna is reminding us that everything that we call real, the self, the body, the planet, the past, present, future, exist only by designation. That means naming it, labeling it as this, the past, the present, the future. We talked about this before. You cannot have a past if you don't have a future. You can't have a present if you don't have a past and a future. None of them exist without the others. But what we do with the labels is we concretize all these things that are completely interrelated, interconnected, fluid, constantly shifting. So we need to understand what we're doing with labels. Labels are important. We need them to communicate, but we also need to understand how to use them in a way that is beneficial, not concretizing and separating things off. A person is a label on a constantly shifting set of parts and processes. World is just a word we agree on. To find a solid thing behind the label, when we try to find a solid thing behind the label and it disappears, it's like the example of rainbow. We have this label we give to to this, oh wow, look at this beautiful colors in the sky after the rain. That's a rainbow. Or we draw pictures that look very concrete of rainbows and stuff. But if we actually have a rainbow kind of in front of us, like you're holding a hose to the sunlight, the rainbow's there, you cannot grab it. And it is so impermanent. It's just coming together because of the sun, the water, the refraction, everything that's coming together, and you cannot grasp, and everything's like that. Even though it may appear so solid, we start taking away all the names that we're calling it, not just the outer name, cup, but well, here's the lid. Here's the, here it's made out of this particular material, plastic. We start to getting down into all the labels and the sub-labels and the subatomic labels, and there's nothing we can actually point to say, what is this? It's just a sort of a coming together for a period of time, and it's moving and changing and shifting. But what we do and the way we've made everything appear to us because of our own particular magic show is we make it concrete. Whether it's a solid table or my solid mother, And we get into all kinds of emotional problems because of it. And this is actually is pointing the way towards the release from all of that.
What strikes me then, actually, you can see why, actually, because of this dynamic way things exist, ever changing, impermanent dynamic things, you see the importance of intention and karma. Karma meaning action, and the results, that come as it's a perpetual cycle of action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. So
Okay.
this is the
It never
you can
stops.
see that why morality is so, ethics and morality are so incredibly, why love and compassion matter so much, because this is a dynamic, moving thing, and if you, for 1 second, go, if you inject harming behavior into all that, it's sort of like, an atom bomb in the middle of a pink puffy rainbow.
Could you also say, you mentioned harming? Harming would be a permanent thing. You're doing it to create something. So either if it's towards someone or a group of people, so that they know that something that did was solid, and now you're angry or you're hurt, so you're going to do something to them. Does that make sense? Would that be considered trying to to
Concretize.
concretize whatever's going on, when in fact they're emotions. They're not anything you can put your arms around, but yet I might blow the building up. And what good does that do? Because that has its own elements.
Well, again, just imagine that the whole thing is, look, imagine an aquarium with all the fish swimming around and the plants waving and, all the neat stuff in an aquarium. And then you inject some very harming thing to that. It disrupts everything in the aquarium.
Yeah.
Mm.
Temporarily.
Mm.
Would you say?
But it has an impact.
Yeah.
And because of that temporary effect, everything has changed forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Buddha was extremely, extremely wise. When we look at these 10 virtuous actions and 10 non-virtuous actions, that is the first level of practice that the Buddha gives us. If you look at every single one of those virtuous actions, save and protect life, be inclusive in your speech, never intend to harm. They are totally, every single one of them is in alignment with interconnectedness, interdependence, how things actually function in a healthy way. Every single one of the negative emotions, kill, steal, hate, harm, they're all the opposite of that. They're all breaking up this interdependent, connected, fluid thing. And this, you can see, this is our problem. And many of us, I think, probably myself included, when I first was studying Buddhism, I thought, oh, this is the Buddha's 10 Commandments, I want to get to the good stuff. If we don't deal with that first level of practice, we will never, never get to the good stuff. Because that first level of practice is so much more profound than we understand when we initially come to Buddhism. And it's the first practice the Buddha gave. If we're not doing that, we need to do it right away, because that will clear the way for the rest of the Buddha's teachings. Because the positive actions are a total alignment with the nature of reality, and the negative actions that we engage in totally are opposed to the nature of reality. And try to chop it up into little bits. It's like when you think, you got some problem, oh, I don't like this group of people over there. Let's just blow them up, as if that's going to help. And when have we ever seen that help? It only makes things worse.
Yeah, a ripple effect.
Yeah. That's the ripple effect of karma.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and that, yeah, right.
Yeah. So, so when in Nagarjuna, when he's presenting this, he's not talking about, nothing, when it's nothing exists inherently. He's not talking like nihilism. He's actually talking about freedom. If we understand what is meant by nothing existing inherently, meaning everything is existing the opposite of that, totally connected, totally independent, totally fluid, totally able to change and shift. That's freedom. Isn't that what we would call freedom?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what we don't understand is our habitual negative behavior based on inherent existence is enslaving us. It's keeping us from being free. It's keeping us from being liberated. And so Nagarjuna is trying to get this point across. And it's kind of it is very profound, actually. I mean, today we have, all of us are very familiar with this. We have, I don't know what would you call it? Identity politics, like I'm this,
That's what.
I'm that, you know, don't mess with me because I am this. Well, if we could loosen up a little bit about that, it would be so much more pleasurable for all of us. So a person sees themselves as a certain way, great. Yeah, we have in our family, I can think of two, three, at least three, maybe four family members between Kavita and mine, where there's a child in the family who is identified as another gender. And each one of these families has been beautiful about it. Beautiful. They have supported that child. They have not made the child feel like there was anything wrong. Just whatever you want to be, that's fine. So where the problem comes in all of that is if the child believes this is what I am, my fixed identity, the way we all do, the way we all do. So this identity politics, which sort of locks you into something, it sort of takes away the fluidity of the kind of person you can be. And that's all up to them. That really is all up to them. But I see some wonderful things happening in the families that we have and the way they have sort of embraced this in a way that's trying to help the child, not to say, no, you're wrong, stop that. So that's there are some steps there in the right direction, and there also could be some pitfalls to this. This is my identity, getting stuck with it, identifying yourself as this thing and not going, wait a minute, I'm much more than that. So that's an interesting thing I thought about. So let's go on to the next verse. Jeffrey Hopkins translation. For this reason, the Buddha, except for keeping silent, said nothing about the fourfold format, having or not having a limit, both or neither. So I'll read the modern rendering. That's why the Buddha didn't get into debates on the 4 points of whether 1, the world truly begins, or 2, the world truly ends, or 3, the world truly begins and truly ends, or 4, the world neither truly begins nor truly ends. He stayed silent because ultimate truth does not fit into inherently existent categories. It won't work. It's like you can't put this round circle into a square peg. It won't fit. So when the Buddha was asked, we're revisiting this again. I mean, they keep going over this. I can see why this particular action the Buddha took of not answering certain questions is a very important one for us to understand. When asked whether the world or the self has an end, the Buddha stayed silent, not because he didn't have an answer, but because the question itself was built on the wrong, fixed assumption that the world and the self inherently exist. Different Indian schools, ancient Indian schools, there were the Charvakas, the Samkhyas, the Jains, the Vatsiputriyas. They all argued endlessly among themselves. Does the world end? Is the self permanent? Do we continue after death? Does any of that sound familiar to present day? I mean, if you go online and you look at all of the comment threads people have about what somebody has said, well, everybody has their own opinion. Like, this is not right. This is not right. I agree with this part, but I don't agree with that. We all have an opinion. We all disagree. We all think our particular point of view is the correct one. Another example, have you ever been in an argument with someone where you are holding so tightly on to your particular point of view and your side of the argument that you will not even hear what the other person's argument is? You're just going, no, no. And the same's going with the other side. So there's no room, because there's an assumption I'm correct, and there's an assumption on the other person I'm correct. There is no space for opening up a little bit to see a different way. And this is going on all the time. We see it all the time in our relationships and all the time, online. So that's what this particular section is talking about, this kind of dynamic.
Where was our consciousness before our current vessel existed?
Where is consciousness?
I don't know, I'm asking
Right.
you, where was it?
Is that a
So,
Consciousness-
there's this concept of beginningless time in Buddhism, and nothing begins and nothing ends. It always is. And yet, from a sort of a more scientific perspective, humans have only been present on the earth for a certain period of time, which is defined by some place where they started to exist. And if that's true, and we didn't have the current vessels our consciousness exists in, but our consciousness has existed since beginningless time, where was our consciousness before these kinds of vessels existed?
Well, I mean, I can't tell you exactly where my consciousness was or your consciousness was, but what I would say is consciousness, like everything else, it's a continuum. It's constantly moving. Everything is constantly moving. Everything. So I can't say. I mean, it's like, even we could even have an assumption that, well, I'm a human, so I must have had a human consciousness. Well, not necessarily. There are all kinds of consciousnesses that are non-human consciousnesses. So it could have been a non-human consciousness, you know. There could, I mean, and where the place, I don't know, the place, where, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
places and realms of expression that one could, be in. So there's not really I suppose somebody who was very clairvoyant or something, or maybe a Buddha or something, could see, say where your consciousness was prior to your particular embodiment now.
Well, I'm not so much thinking about mine in particular, I'm thinking about any consciousness before this current iteration of our vessels existed. Because, when we talk about our consciousness, we have this precious human rebirth. So we're born into this human form, but the human form has not existed forever.
Right,
Since
right.
the beginning of time, at least from a scientific perspective. So if that's the case, where were our consciousnesses collectively or individually existing before this particular vessel or form existed?
This volume would be very helpful. It talked about the cycles of the cosmos and the realms and the levels of reality.
Well,
And it's vast and continually impermanent.
but let's just as
There is a way of talking about it.
they have a way, they have a whole
Gets you-
system. However, what I would say is,
To exist for their consciousness to have an expression.
rather than get stuck in the weeds here, all I would say is we don't necessarily, this particular world, this particular planet, is not necessarily the only one that could support some kind of intelligent life that we would say is very, very similar to what we call human, that has the kind of a mind, the kind of a consciousness that can take on board these kinds of concepts and do something with them. It doesn't mean it can only happen on planet Earth. Samsara is not talking about just planet Earth. Samsara is talking about a whole realm of existence and realms of existence in which there's this self-grasping. Some of the realms you can be born in such a way that you have a vehicle which has a mind that can take on Buddha's teachings and begin to work with them. But it doesn't necessarily have to be humans the way we see ourselves. It could just be a precious life that's like a human. So there's no real answer I could come up with, because if you take on board, and I have taken on board because it's logical to me that there cannot actually be a first cause. Something had to have caused the first cause. So it's just going to go back indefinitely. And who's to say?
We can't comprehend it.
No, I mean there could be worlds and civilizations so much more advanced than ours. We think we've got the best thing going. But there could be something so much greater, so much more advanced, so much more conducive, say, to understanding and practicing this material and quickly becoming, enlightened. I mean, it's just a possibility. Yeah. I mean, just logically, I would have to say it's got to be a possibility. It's got to. So I mean, I don't have a specific answer, but I have what I think about it.
Think of evolution somehow, how, like, as we change our minds and just our thoughts and even loosening our grip on concretizing how we articulate our world, our form, we talked about it a little bit before, our form can change, our human, like, we'll be able to, I mean, our form will become different.
Mm-hmm.
And so when your question, just my mind goes to perhaps before kind of it, as we understand this realm, before humans had this form, consciousness was doing, it was
Mm-hmm.
expressing as something else
Something.
before we evolved to this form. I don't know.
Yeah, we actually we don't know the answers, because we're not omniscient, but logically I would say, there's so many possibilities.
Brian Bales is unmuted,
Okay.
which
Well,
gives me thing to say.
Great.
well, I was just going to say this is making me think. I've been pondering Brian's question here, and before I go back into where was my consciousness, before in my kind of your previous life, well, I think about, well, my form's very different now than when I was 6 years old, but I remember that very well, or 8 years old, So where was my consciousness? Where was my mind when I was 8? I mean, I'm different now, right? Like, or am I? That's I don't know. I'm just I think if we think about it, our perceptions are always changing, and our forms are always changing. I mean, that's what aging is, right? And we sort of mistakenly make this connection, like that 8-year-old is the same me, right? But is it? It's that's also just a label. And a grasping to a continuity. So I don't have an answer to the question of where my consciousness was when I was 8, or when I was 2, or before I was born. I really don't know. All I can say is that there's a process happening that in this moment allows me to label certain things, but and perceive things certain ways and feel things certain ways, and maybe that is, I can conceive of that being very different. That's all.
Mhm.
Meaning, so the idea of like being reborn or being in another form, like as an animal or something, seems very logical to me, because it's just a shift in perception, right? And the coming together of this, whatever this consciousness is, with various what we call material elements and things like that. So I don't know, but yeah, I don't have an answer. It's just thinking about the fluidity of, like as you were saying, just when you let go of that concretizing a little bit. To me, uh, it brings me more in the present moment rather than one, because the past and all that too is also kind of a label we put on
Yeah.
our experience, right? And I don't know if there is anything other than the present. I really don't know. I don't know if there's anything other than the present experience we're having.
Hey, Brian.
Does that make any sense? I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
a lot of sense.
Brian, with a Y. I wanna, did you, when Brian with the RI asked
Yeah.
the question, did you hear did you notice that he prefaced it by saying something to the effect of, given that it was sort of like things always exist. You sort of made
Well, I
this,
said there's a concept of beginningless.
there's a concept of
Right.
time.
Right, that our subtle consciousness
Yeah.
has existed,
Right,
and it moves from vessel to vessel and lifetime to lifetime,
right.
right? So, okay, and you can assume that, the vessel you occupy depends upon the actions you take in a particular point in your lifetime, and the cumulative effect of those actions, karma and habituations. But and you can, but from a scientific standpoint on Earth, we say, we believe that the human vessel has only existed a certain amount of time. Now, are bacteria before that, or protozoans, or amphibians, or single cell organisms, that, apparently, from a scientific standpoint, all of what we are now has evolved from. So I was just thinking, well, okay, where was and not even mine, where was subtle consciousness, if it existed from beginningless time, where was it before, or how was it adapting to the evolution of
Well, you asked where was it?
yeah, I asked where was it, because I didn't know, was it in a bacteria, was it?
Maybe it was.
Maybe it was, but then,
There's
wait, let me keep
yeah.
going, but then, if what's true, that there are aliens and there are alien species that are more advanced than we are, is this a way station for our consciousness that we pass through on the path to some other place in the universe, the galaxy, the existence that allows when our consciousness evolves to a higher level, we're no longer here on Earth? Or are we all humans, and we just move from one human to another human? Because we talk about the precious human rebirth, we don't talk about anything beyond the precious human rebirth. So I'm just sitting here mulling this over while you're talking about these things, trying to think this through, and again, I'm from the scientific literal stance side, you're kind of you're given a set of one criteria, and from the Buddhist, you're given a set of different criteria, and I'm trying to figure out how to.
You know what's interesting about your criteria sets is that I get the distinct impression, and I could be wrong, so that's why I'm raising it, is that you're holding that this quote, what is currently called, quote, scientific, is correct. And if complete, correct, full, has the ultimate answer to how things exist. Like, that's kind of what I'm
I
hearing.
think, there's a certain body of knowledge that we believe is accurate. Now, it may not be completely accurate, and there may be other things we don't know, but it is what we know.
Currently
Yeah.
think is
So this
happening.
whole idea that, well, I don't understand it, we can't explain it, and there may be something we don't understand, may be true, but it's not a terribly satisfying.
No,
Yes.
it is not satisfying, but I think one of the most fascinating aspects of what we currently label as science is that science can observe what's happening and then affix a cause to it and then say, okay, we know that this is why this is happening. But as you know, you call that, that's sort of a temporary placeholder explanation, because the more deeply the scientific world delves into things, the more their previous explanation of why something happens. So take, when a sperm fertilizes an egg, there's not really, no one really can actually, in the absolute complete sense, say why it works and why it happens and how a human.
There's a lot of teachings about what happens when one consciousness from one vessel passes on to the next vessel, and it's all about mom and dad getting together, and that consciousness kind of saying, "Oh, I'm attracted to that particular couple," and it happens when you sperm and the egg. And there's a lot.
In the teachings, though, they never say that this human form is the only type of.
No, that's
form.
right. But
Right.
most of the teachings say it's regressive if you go to animal, insect, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because your karma sucks, or that's where you belong, or the hell realm, or whatever. You can become a god, or I guess live in the god realm, or what is it?
Yeah, what? Yeah, God realms. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're all still based upon a human form.
Probably not.
Oh, look at Buddha. He was
No,
pretty human to me.
but that's just a placeholder for.
A placeholder, okay.
Well, but what this body that's in the picture,
Okay.
right, is supposed to be made of light and energy.
Has another
Yeah.
with the why.
Again, so what I'm trying to kind of nudge you towards, Brian, I think, is the possibility, because the way you are saying it, and believe me, I relate very strongly, but this idea that this consciousness, subtle consciousness, whatever, is going from place to place, body to body, it is a very concretized, materialistic kind of way of thinking about rebirth and the movement of this. It's like it's literally going from one place. And what I'm trying to say is all of those forms, bodies and stuff, and this is more sort of mind only school, but this idea that those are all perceptions, those are all things forced upon you. Think of it as just consciousness forcing you to see your hand as a hand, or your paw as a paw, or as in other words, your mind isn't going anywhere. Your consciousness isn't going anywhere. It's just changing and forcing different perceptions on you of your body. Just like the way I see my body now, I'm seeing it as getting older. That's because my karma is forcing, my previous states of mind are forcing me to see this thing aging. And I used to previously, or in other moments, I saw it as a young kid, and maybe before that I saw it as a bacteria, or I saw it as, I don't know. And no, that's not very satisfying. And that's why I've asked, I remember asking Lama Pasang, I was like, am I ever gonna actually be able to see a past life, or because that's really frustrating to me. That's really how can I really buy into this whole idea of rebirth and that it's going to go on, and he really wouldn't answer me, other than to say, keep meditating. And which it was an answer, because I think he was saying, yes, you will be able to perceive other states, but I think what he was trying to say is that you have to be in a particular state of mind to see that. I don't know. But anyway, I'm trying to nudge us into thinking of it as consciousness, if that makes any sense. That all those material forms and the going from place to place, those are all, even the things that we say science, when we say science, the atoms we see, that there's all of that is filtered through somebody observing it, right? Through a microscope, and then labeling it. So even though it's consensual and it's predictive and it works, doesn't mean it's not still essentially a consciousness. I don't know. Take it away.
I'm gonna have to watch this again because that's very deep, Brian. And I can't say that I understand what you're saying completely. But I will say this: if you tell me to meditate, and you tell me to meditate long enough to convince myself to believe something, then I would say can meditate to believe anything. And if I believe anything, and anything could be right or wrong. So I have to believe what's right and not what's wrong. So there's some underlying logic to the belief of what is correct versus what is not correct.
You just described a form of meditation I have never been advised to take, which is to meditate in order to believe something.
That's what the Mahamudra is. The Mahamudra.
No, it is not. It is not about meditating to believe something.
Learning. It's just
Holy. No, that is completely. You are completely on the wrong track if you think you're sitting there trying to convince yourself of something. That is not what it is. You are you are inquiring. You are asking, and the best thing that can happen to you is doubt and questioning and doubt and questioning. And the deeper and deeper you let yourself go into that not knowing, you will ultimately begin to discover how things are. You're not meant to sit there and brainwash yourself to believe something that is not true.
You should always
You can
question.
divest yourself of worrying about that ever happening. Because if you follow what Geshe-Nima is telling you,
I just look at a lot of people in this world who believe a lot of stupid things and aren't
and
true.
that is not what Geshe-Nima is asking you to do.
No, but I think.
And you said, if you think that's what you're doing in Mahamudra, you are totally doing something else.
All right, I haven't done it yet, so.
Okay.
All right, I gotta go take.
Phew.
These are all very interesting points, and I welcome Brian Herman's questions because it brings things up that are important to look at, and I'm following what Brian Bales is saying.
So the time speaks to, we all come to class, and then we get up and go, okay, now back to real life.
Yeah, this idea that everything is consciousness. We think we find ourselves in a different body. We think we find ourselves in a different environment, that is all a play of consciousness. It's like what Brian is saying. It's not like consciousness is going anywhere. It's just expressing or display, presenting a different display to itself. And then we either can say, oh, this inherently exists. I'm in some other realm inherently, or simply say, the only moment is the present moment that I'm experiencing now, and I'm experiencing this particular form and this particular environment, but not saying it's anything but the present moment. It's that's really all we have. All we have is the present moment. Even if we were able to quote unquote time travel, our experience of that time travel would be occurring in what we would call the present moment. It has to be that way. Anyway, we should go on because these are great points, but we need to continue.
It's unmuted.
Oh, Arte's unmuted. Okay.
Which might mean AJ.
Oh.
Say something.
Oh no, I was gonna say, listening to both Brian, I was thinking, from the enlightened mind, they say the time doesn't exist. The time is only a perception of our intellectual mind. Everything happens, let's say cosmos and all that. So I think when Brian said, where was the consciousness? I think consciousness was always there, a part of this whole universe. But what happened is, I think in my perspective, we evolved from something, like the light coming into the water, forming one cellular algae. From there, everything happened. And here we are. We're just a biological evolution product with the intellect that got born along the way, which separates us from animal. And with this intellectual, I think our mind is deluded and we are being taken away from the reality, which is the consciousness that Brian was inquiring about. So I think the whole point is to take ourselves away from this delusion and be that reality and consciousness, which I think the enlightened minds are. So for them, the time doesn't exist. For them, death, birth, nothing. I've heard that nothing matters, nothing is relevant to them because time doesn't exist. So they are consciousness always, just living this human birth till death, experiencing everything that normal people do, but they do experience it very differently. There's no suffering for them because they know that the time factor and birth and all this, an inquisitive mind, this inquiry mind, this intellectual we have developed doesn't bother them. So a science is basically just an evolution of intellectual mind. That's all it is. It's data based. So that comes to the meditation when Kovida said, what is, like Brian said, the meditation to believe on what I believe versus not believe. I think meditation is all about thoughtless state where I don't know, but that's what the point of meditation is, not to think. Let the mind settle so much that you realize what the consciousness, where you are, who the truth is, who you are exactly, comes clarity to you, and maybe that would be the answer to Brian. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking the consciousness has been always there. It's a creation of the universe. How do I get here? Because of the intellectual mind from the biological evolution. Science is basically just the evolution of the intellectual mind. And what do we do? Meditate, like Kovida said, to the point where your mind is not thinking, a thoughtless state. Maybe that will give us the light of the who we are and where we're trying to go. I think that's how I'm thinking, just to help my little point to see if anybody can understand something.
Beautiful.
That's very good. Thank you, Ajay.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. The kind of meditation you're talking about is a meditation that is basically just experiencing consciousness bare as it is, and there is, and like you said, science is an evolutionary process, and science is now looking at the idea that consciousness has always been here. It's a fundamental aspect of the universe. It does not come out of matter. It is a fundamental aspect. So science itself is shifting. There are two kinds of meditation, however, in Buddhism. One is the kind you talked about. It's a very, very high and deep level of meditation. But there's another kind where it does involve what we would call thinking. It's analytical meditation. We use our logic. We read the Buddhist teachings, we read the Dharma, and then we logically ourselves, this is what these classes are like about. We logically go through that ourselves and say, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? How do I see this as it relates to my life, my behavior, my suffering, my happiness? If it makes sense, then the Dharma becomes stronger in our mind. And so we keep going with that analytical meditation at the same time, beginning to practice this much deeper level where you just let go of all the concepts, you know. So there are different kinds of meditation is my point. But other than that, I'm totally on board with what you're saying, Ajay.
Yes. So the Buddhism is basically all mind training. So what the
Yeah,
other part of the meditation you said is the mind training,
training.
which is a tool we use given by Buddhism philosophy. So yes, I understand the mind training is what you just said, but ultimately I think the other type of meditation is going to help find more answers.
Ultimately, yes.
Yeah.
Without the mind training, however, we're kind of lost.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of get stuck. So
Mhm.
let's see where we're at. Oh, we're gone. We're done. We're done. Well, I mean, there's more interesting stuff, really, and a lot of it makes a lot of sense, especially why the Buddha didn't answer the question. To me, it makes the most sense I've seen so far. So anyway, the time is over. It's gone sort of like a dream. Um, we're here in another present moment. So may this the Buddha talks about this mind, and Geshe Nima talks about it this way, this mind of unconditional love. This is the awakened heart and mind. This is what bodhicitta is. It's unconditional love. May that grow in us. May we actually understand the logic and the joy of unconditional love. May that grow in us. And may we always, always come in contact with the pure Dharma carried down through a pure lineage so that we can continue on this path until we actually bring ourselves to the enlightened state that we can become, which will be for the benefit and happiness of all other beings to whom we are connected. Thank you. And we'll work this next time.
Amen.
Good conversations, I have to say. I loved it. Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
See you next
Thank you.
time.
See you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for recording this. My phone keeps overheating and cutting off. I have to let it cool down. And so to be able to listen to this afterward is such a blessing. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I agree. It's really important for us to record these. Okay,
Thank you. Bye.
bye.